Okay. Good evening, I think. This is the Chicago Computer Society South Suburban Computer Club and of May 2025. Uh, this evening, we got a few things planned. One is going to be a speaker, Ron Friedman, CCS Secretary. And then I also have a few additional things. There'll be a handout. Uh, but I'm going to open this up to, I hope, a brief open forum. And after the main presentations, that we'll have maybe a little more time to discuss what was covered and other questions and problems. Um, okay, I got that. I had to double check something. Anybody got anything to way of problems, issues, uh, something that maybe you want to share with other people? I got a few things myself.
Just a quick update. I did update two computers to Windows 11 Pro 24H2. Very few issues.
I've had very few issues myself, but I have had a couple machines, and one of them was one of them that I tried to preserve that I mentioned in previous meetings that I want to upgrade it from the 22H2 it was on, keeping everything. Well, that didn't work out because even though I was able to take and find a new tool by pure accident in doing other research, not related to that issue, I found a tool that will let me convert without harm from MBR, which that system was in, to GPT. It did have a UEFI partition, but only 100 megabits, so I knew that had to be enlarged. But there was some kind of a corruption within it that I could not get any of my normal tools and routines to correct under any circumstances. And some of it was in the services. I found I had three corrupt services, but only one of the three was running. And I don't know if that's part of the problem, but I ended up having to do a clean install and I have to rebuild everything from scratch. Fortunately, it was not a production system, so there wasn't that much data. I saved that information. I have a full backup of the damn thing, but now I got to get all the programs in and again, then copies of the data back on. So I got stuck. Now I hope the other one that I've got in that situation, I don't have that kind of a problem, but we'll have to wait and see. I also have something else. Uh, it is a setting I didn't know about. Well, in a sense, I did, but it was obfuscated as to what it did and how it did it. Until just recently, I happened to come across information that let me know what it was. And the oddity about it was, let's see if I can share my screen. Probably won't let me do that, but we'll give it a shot anyhow. And get out of my way. All right. This is 11. This one's got a odd problem, but it's not stopping the system from running. Uh, you go into settings, and one of these years it'll come up. go into System, Display, go all the way down to Graphics under Related Settings. And this is where it gets real ugly as to what some of this stuff does in this area. But these are some given programs, but there's also another way of looking at this little sucker. It allows you, let's say let's take a look here. What I got. I don't have one that I'm ready for. Desktop. I'm going to see if I can find in here, go down to the C drive. Anything you want to put in, you got to know exactly where to find the executable and or a shortcut to the executable. It's the only way this thing works. I'm going to go into Windows in this case here. I'm going to go down to something here. Where the heck did it? Oh, there we go. It went down too far. And I want to get into, I'm on the standard user desktop. So that's where I want this. This affects by account. So I don't want to modify the master account because I usually am in the standard account. So I'm letting you know about it. You have to have your view settings to show hidden folders and files. And mine is here. It has app data. Now, if I go into here, you get local low and roaming. And some of these things, like let's say Zoom as an example, it's in roaming, and you have to go down to Zoom, go into the binary folder, bin, and then find the executable, which is this one here, Zoom application, and select add. Now, I come down to the list down here, Zoom meeting. If I click on the down arrow, I get an option in here. Let Windows decide, well, I'm going to change that to high performance. It will improve the quality and speed when Zoom is running. Do not put a lot of applications in there, but I have on another machine put in 2 browsers, and it did give a performance boost. It's not overwhelming surprise, but it will give you a improved performance because the GPU is being used in a high capacity mode to take a load off of your CPU for anything that's graphical. But you have to be able to find in your task manager. I'm going to go into task manager on this system, and I'm going to go into here, and it says I have a GPU. Now, a lot of the old ones didn't have a GPU showing. So you can't do it on the GPU, but you could, like, say, the browsers. But if you got a GPU, even though it's using shared system memory, you can get a little bit of a performance boost, especially if you have a low-end system. And as an end result, it will give you a bit of performance boost. This came to light also because I was playing at the time with an old Windows 10 laptop. I don't remember who gave it to me. One of the people that I help out sometimes give me old equipment they don't want anymore. And it is a Pentium with 4 cores. It has 4 gigs of memory, not upgradable. But I had taken out a hard drive and put in an SSD, so it has an SSD in it. And when I set the graphics for the browsers for that, it improved the performance of the web browsers, especially when you're showing. It has ads that are videos and also your any YouTube stuff that you may be trying to play. So it was worth experimenting with. I just am saying now some of the programs like for the browsers, I went into program files or program files 86 if it's an old 32-bit version. But in either case, that does work. So take it for what it's worth. It might give you some improvement. It may not. I know for Zoom, even right now, the machine that's the host of this meeting is one that I have modified for Zoom to try and improve its that program's performance in the meeting. I also did one other program on that. I didn't do any of the browsers. So I thought I'd bring that to light in case somebody's looking for at least a little niche in improvement in your system. You get sometimes people when they're giving me stuff, they give me stuff because they don't want it anymore. They know a lot of the stuff needs to be properly recycled if it gets tossed into the landfill otherwise. So I thought I'd bring that up. And matter of fact, an older brother of mine today called me up on the phone, and he said he had 3 computers if I wanted them. I said, fine. So he dropped them off this afternoon. I have not been able to get any history out of him because I haven't been able to talk to him for 5 minutes straight. So what I got in the box are 3 14-inch devices, laptop style. 2 are Chromebooks, and they still work. At least I know one works, and the other one's an identical one to it. And it's both are Lenovo. So these are the units. This is one of them. The other one's currently on the power supply trying to get a recharge. The other one is a Lenovo laptop, Windows 11. There's only a couple minor problems. It's a Celeron, only 2 cores. It has 4 gigs of memory, and it has a 64 gig SSD or eMMC. I haven't figured that out yet. And all of it's soldered in. You can't change a damn thing on it. So it's like that Windows 10 machine that I already had in that respect. It's also in Mode S. And Mode S used to stand for school type laptop for the kids. But now, somewhere along the line, they changed it. S means security to the people in who are very security conscious. And the S mode means that you have to get everything that's blessed by Microsoft. Microsoft software, Microsoft Store software that has been blessed, etc. Zoom is not one of them. I was before the meeting. I tried to load in Zoom from Zoom. It don't work. And I tried going to the store, I couldn't find Zoom in there either. So I was completely out of luck on that aspect of it. So in retrospect, uh, it's a very limited machine, but it's usable. Right now, I'm trying to figure out how to get out of S mode. There is in the store a way of getting out, though they give you lots of warnings you shouldn't do that. Uh, and I know Wayne has a machine the same way. It's Windows 22H2 Home. And on this machine, if I can upgrade it to 24H2 with a 2-core Celeron and with 4 gigs of memory, my only question is, will I still be alive if and when it gets done? So
Okay. Tim, question.
go ahead.
First of all, one point of order. The Zoom Workplace app is in the Microsoft Store.
I couldn't find it. I
Okay.
did that.
Try Zoom Workplace as the search term.
Well, I did one with just the word Zoom, and I couldn't
No,
find it.
it's Zoom Workplace.
Yeah, well, they love playing games.
And here it is. I got it. First try.
Okay.
Zoom Workplace. That's what I always search for because no, the term Zoom won't get you to Zoom Workplace because there are other things that are Zoom something else.
Oh.
Second point, question. On the one where you did the acceleration, had you done anything more system-wide, such as enabling hardware accelerated GPU scheduling?
No, I have not done that yet.
Because that's the recommendation that the AI gave. It's its fourth recommendation. Turn on system-wide the hardware accelerated GPU setting.
Okay.
That gives extra performance on anything that is going to use the GPU intensively.
Well, any thing means that if you got a screen, whether it's a laptop or it's a desktop monitor, all that video, if you put it through the GPU, you're going to be getting better performance on that and reducing the workload of the CPU.
Yeah, and there is also hardware acceleration, which is associated with that.
Right.
Browsers also have hardware acceleration, and at least in Chrome and Edge, it's not turned on by default.
No, it's not. Most of it, most of what I've seen on them so far, they are not user friendly in that sense that, hey, if a person's got a GPU in there, why don't we turn it on? And if there isn't a GPU in the system, okay, then I understand you have it turned off.
Yeah, but it is something that by default is off, so you have to opt into it in the settings for each browser. And
Anyway,
it'll probably do something like what you did in App Data.
most likely, it's just a case where right now, the one machine that I was playing with that has the Windows 10, that's a project for down the line. And as far as the 3 machines that got dropped off this afternoon, uh, at first I didn't think I'd have time trying to set up today's meetings and stuff in time. So I didn't think I'd get around to them, but I at least got around to the laptop, finding out more about it. I got 2 accounts set up, but again, Windows wants you to set up the first account uh, attached to Microsoft, and I didn't want to do that. I want a local admin account. But I know that account, I did set up my usual Microsoft attached account. Then I set up the local administrator, logged into that, and then I decommissioned the administrator of the Microsoft account back down to a standard. That's a pain
Yeah.
in the butt to have to do that, and most people have no clue about doing that.
Yeah, that's one way to go about it. There's a couple of other ways that are even more of a pain.
Well, I have done other ways of doing it too, but since this unit does not have Ethernet port, I would have to have an adapter, which I do, so
Hmm.
that part's not a problem. But I also would need to have gone in to the unit with it off to remove the Wi-Fi card, and then it will let me create my local administrator account. Then shut it down and plug the Wi-Fi back in. Who's going to do that other than a DIY techie person?
On my tower, that would be a no-brainer. On my mini PC, I probably wouldn't be able to do that.
Oh, on all of mine that I know of, I can do that. I've done it before. I've changed Wi-Fi cards in devices, especially like laptops, etc. And also my minis, which is a little different than your minis.
Yeah,
You got the smaller minis, I got the larger minis. And
yeah.
I can play around with the Wi-Fi cards. But that's a pain in the butt because they don't give you a way of disabling Wi-Fi if it's running in the system. And with Ethernet, if an Ethernet is plugged in, you just unplug it and that's it. And then it'll let you set up a local account. Then you plug the Ethernet back in after you get past that point, and everything's hunky dory. And then you create your standard account. But this one here, I didn't want to take it apart at first, but just before this meeting, I did take off the back. That's how I know everything's soldered in. There ain't much to it, but the only thing that's changeable is the Wi-Fi card.
I think on most of the NUC PCs, the Wi-Fi is soldered in.
Oh, uh, the NUC that I repaired for a neighbor a while back, that one had a standard card.
Hmm.
So if wanted to, I could have pulled that card out and upgraded it to something else. But he didn't know and care. It was working fine for him in that aspect. He just had other issues, and
Well,
that was primarily the fan died on it. Anybody else got anything interesting?
Um, Maybe. To me, it was interesting. So we'll go with that. In Microsoft Edge browser, if you're browsing a page and you want the image that's on that page to be enlarged, click on the image. Hopefully, it's not a hyperlink; it's just an image. Hit the Control key twice, and it will pop up in its own window, enlarged.
Really?
I saw that and went, wow, I can use that because my eyes are shot. So that was a nice thing to learn. I learned that I'm a day old now because I learned that yesterday.
Yeah, that's real interesting too. So just click on the image you want enlarged, double
Yep,
click the control key.
yep.
It'll make a separate image enlarged.
It pops up the image in a new window. It's enlarged.
I got to try and remember that one. Okay. Anybody got any other tips or problems, questions?
I looked online and no, the NUC does not have a replaceable Wi-Fi card. At least not from 8th generation onward.
Woo! I think his was an eighth, but I could be wrong.
Well, the two form factors, allegedly according to Reddit, no, it's soldered in. And I think that's true of mine,
It could be.
which is 11th.
Well, I mean, anything's possible. They're doing more and more scroller things like that anyhow, Ned, trying to make sure that you do your homework and you decide what you want and need in any new computer before you ever buy anything. Because otherwise, you get what you paid for and you can't change much of anything. That's the way they're doing it. They're making these devices disposable, I guess is the best way to phrase it.
And smaller. So
Well, that's true too.
if you don't need to have, I mean, it's what they did with the laptop batteries. The laptop batteries used to be removable, but they took up all the connectivity, took up too much space. They said, nah, we're not going to do that anymore. We're going to create flat batteries and just glue the heck out of them and put them into these really thin computers. Like what Mac did with the Mac Mini, and just soldered the CPU and soldered the memory and soldered the SSD drive all right on the little tiny Mac Mini, and said, "Hey, this is how we're going to do things." We don't.
Well,
I
let me
think
tell you
that's more
something.
reliable.
Yeah, I
Probably.
think it's more reliable. Yeah, let me tell you what happened with my Chromebook when I changed the battery. It turns out it could be changed. And that's about the flattest, thinnest form factor you're going to find. And it is a ribbon battery. It's a flat battery.
Mm-hmm.
And there are replacements available. There are even third-party replacements.
They're,
So-
they're they're pretty flat until they get really thick because they've been overcharged a few times.
I've never had that happen with my Chromebook.
Oh, I
But
must have abused mine.
My Chromebook, having the aluminum casing, conducts heat pretty well,
Okay.
except when it turns itself on when it's inside of a case,
Yeah. Mine are
which it
good.
seems to like to do. Don't ask me why. But anyway, my point is the batteries are replaceable in Chromebooks. It's not easy, but you don't have to do any major surgery. You just have to be able to get the back off and pull a piece of tape.
Oh, so it's not underneath any other additional metal or anything like that.
Not really.
Okay, cool.
It's not like trying to get to the right protect screw, which is a little bit protected. And I took that out because that's the only way to convert it to Linux. After all, it wasn't getting any updates from Google. So,
Well, I just on this Lenovo laptop that was dropped off this afternoon, I just got out of S mode.
you did?
Yep.
Right.
I have another problem because I got so many machines, old ones and much newer stuff. It was giving me a hard time. It wouldn't even give me a response screen of any kind until just recently. I happened to click on it to get the S mode and remove it, and it was a case where they only let you have on the Microsoft account up to 10 machines attached. And I've got 5 or 6 Microsoft accounts. So every now and then in these Microsoft accounts, I got to go in and I got to delete 1 or 2 of my real old machines that aren't going to be used for Windows anymore. They're going to be used, if anything, for Linux or not at all, and probably scrapped. But in the meantime, I do have at least some degree of flexibility on this. Talk about bottom end. The only thing would have been lower than this if they were still making the 32-bit Atom processors. That was the only thing that was lower.
Yep, those used to be fun.
Yeah, but I would have been curious if this one here, instead of having the Celeron 2-core in it, if it had like an N100 or something like that in it. See what that was like, because I don't have any units with the N series processors.
Hmm.
Oh well. Anybody else got anything to bring up? And otherwise, we'll get into first presentation.
Yeah, I've had problems trying to get the update on my 24 H2. It,
You're past due, so to speak. I had this same issue on a number of my machines. I was holding off because of problems they were having with a lot of machines. But when I got around to start doing the updates last month, I ran into the same problem you did. They're not offering it through Windows Update, okay? They only give you that offer for so long. So what you have to do, you have to go to, in your browser, Microsoft Media Creation Tool, open that up, and then you got several choices. One choice is update my machine now. And it does it through an assistant. It should live on the internet download and install your Windows. Another one,
it doesn't work. This keeps showing up under the updates, and it's the cumulative update.
as, as I recall, you have an S mode. Did you ever get rid of the S mode?
S mode.
Yeah, I may be mixing you up with somebody else, but as I recall, you had a laptop with Windows 11 and it had S mode.
How do I check for the S mode?
You go into settings, system, scroll down to about, bring the about information up, and scroll down in that screen, and it tells you what version of Windows 11 you've got in that machine. And if you're in S mode, it'll tell you in S mode.
Okay, it shows.
If that's true, in settings screen, back in the initial settings screen, up at the top left side, you have a search bar. Type in there mode S, and then the results that come back, you'll have to scroll way down and you'll find mode S. Mode S will bring up a screen. You can open up the store. It'll bring Microsoft Store up there with a black screen with white lettering warning you, don't do this, okay? If you do, you can't turn it back on. But to get regular Windows updates and or regular programs to install from sources other than Microsoft Store, you have to have the S mode turned off. And it'll give you a button that says Get. You tap the Get button, and it takes a little bit of time, depending on the power of your system and the speed of your internet. But eventually it'll come back saying, okay, it's done. And now you can go to Windows Update, and you still won't get an offer to upgrade from whatever version you've got out there now. You have to go to the media creation tool. And
I've got 24H2 that I updated back in February.
Okay, if you got that, then that's as far as we all are going. You won't
This is an update.
a regular update that's in your tool.
It's a cumulative update,
That's right.
Every
and
month.
it won't install every time.
You
It'll download and tries to
Okay.
run, and then it has an install error.
Okay. One of the things to do, copy that error code message down, and then in a browser tab, you type in Microsoft Windows Update error, and then put in that error code they give you and see what it tries to tell you. Another possibility is Windows Update every now and then gets sick. And so what you might have to do there is go into settings, system, troubleshooting or troubleshooter, select other troubleshooters, and usually the fourth one is run Windows Update troubleshooter. And if you're having a problem with the updater, hopefully that'll fix it.
Okay, I'll try that.
But look up the error first, trying to
Yeah,
determine if the error is trying to tell you something else, such as maybe you've got corruption on your system and that's blocking it from updating.
okay.
In case that happens, now you got to get into other tools like SFC and DISM to correct a lot of problems. Also run check disk space C colon space forward slash F as in Frank. And
I've run those.
okay, if you've run all those, then the error message is telling you got some other problem involved that has to be corrected first, or Windows Updater itself is having a problem, and the troubleshooter may be able to fix that. Other than that, the only way to deal with it would be to use an external tool, WSUS or WinGet.
And I would like to add to that that sometimes I have gone into PowerShell to repair these issues. That is for people who are technically minded.
Right. Anything else by anybody? Okay, our live presenter tonight is Ron Friedman, and he's giving us an updated version of what he did in Westside Net on Windows 10 systems and what your options are. It's going to be a series of presentations each month through September or October. So, Ron, it's all yours.
All right, can you stop sharing your screen?
No.
Oh, please do anyhow. Thank you. All right, let me set my screen up here. Okay. Greetings, salutations. My name's Ron Friedman. I call my program 10 to 11 minutes for Windows 11. Should I stay or should I go? And it's really about the decision to go to Windows 11, because you don't have to. But we're talking about a number of different things. I can give you a little bit about me. Before I get started, how many of you have already gone to Windows 11? All right. How many were, Dennis, were you at the Westside meeting when I gave this presentation?
Yeah.
John, did you? Not John, just fell off my screen. Okay. All right. It's the same presentation I gave at West Suburban. It should be faster. It's still going to be more than 10 to 11 minutes. I lie. I work with all kind of OSs, everything from early Windows 286. I was part of the sales engineering team that came up with the first Windows word processor, which was not Microsoft Word. I've been in Linux and Chrome OS and Mac OS and OS X and Mac by the number. I'm the kind of person who still feels index cards are good technology, and I'm a cheapskate. So if any of those fall into your line of thinking, that's my line of thinking. We're going to be talking about preparation today to get to Windows 11. If you have a computer that's pre-pandemic, there's a 50-50 chance it's not suitable for a straight ahead forward installation of Windows 11. It probably doesn't have the right generation processor, or probably doesn't have a TPM module. Who knows what may or may not be there. So I'm not going to be talking about tweaking your systems. I'm not going to be talking about hacking your system to make Windows 11 go on. But if you have a system that is compatible, that's what we're going to find out today, and then we'll figure out future sessions. So today is pre-prep. So we're not actually doing any preparation. We're just all in advance of preparation. In June, we'll be covering the preparation for actually doing an upgrade. In July, we'll talk about preparation for doing a migration, which means it's not on the same computer. You need a new computer. New meaning new to you. It could be a refurbished computer, it could be a new computer. In August, we'll actually do an upgrade. It'll be a very fast upgrade. It'll be time-lapsed, so you can see what's involved when it works right. When it works wrong, I'm not going into that. I am right now at about 90 to 95%. These things just work, and there's not an issue. So 1 out of 10, 1 out of 20 may go, I don't like this. But my job is to make those work. That's my entire job. I haven't lost a system yet with my process that I'm doing. And in September, we'll actually do a migration. Yes, Dennis?
Just to clarify that one point you just made,
Yeah.
95% of the time they've gone through no problem.
Perfect. Yep.
Would you say that the times where it did not is because of customizations or particular software, things that people have done to their computer that caused a problem?
It's usually a driver. It's usually the tests don't actually test how good your memory is. They don't test a lot of things, like the issue that Tim had, where it had EUFI or UEFI, but the partition wasn't the right size. So there's just weird things that are based on, especially configurations that have been migrated from Windows XP, Windows 7, Windows 8, Windows 10. Those kind of things, you just don't know what's out there. And again, especially if you have a PC that's prior to the pandemic, you really don't know what's been done over time. You may be great at being a techie, but Windows is not meant for techies. You can't deploy Windows with highly customized systems. So but the object is to know what is or what isn't customized, and get that right up front, so you're at least prepared. Okay. There's another option, which we're not going to go into, but it's just continue using Windows 10. There's no reason why. I mean, on October 14th, Windows 10 will continue to work. On October 15th, it will continue to work. Or you can dump Windows altogether. Some people say, hey, well, it's about time I learned Linux, or gee, that Mac system looks nice, or I use an iPad and I don't need any of this other stuff. But it's not about hacking. It's not about super tweaking unsupported hardware. This is just basically vanilla. So if you're on the fence, to give you some comfort level, that how this will work. And to me, the most important thing is pre-prep. What apps do you have? Some of us have apps that we've been using since Windows 7, Windows XP days. Are you using Office 2010? Do you have some shareware program or open source software that you got a long time ago that you've never upgraded because the guy doesn't keep it updated anymore, and you just like using it? What peripherals do you have? So you're going to Windows 11. Windows 11 doesn't support all things from the past. It's not necessarily backwards compatible. So do you have a parallel printer? That may or may not work on Windows 11. Do you have devices that use FireWire? Do you have some old USB input devices that may not work anymore? USB 2.0 may work. What hardware do you have? So do you have a monitor that's a VGA monitor? Now that's not important probably if you're upgrading your current computer, but if you're going to migrate to a new computer, chances are the new computer doesn't have a VGA output. So there's some things that we're going to be considering and going through. You don't have to take serious notes. The notes are going to be at, they're just a text file at T as in Tom, C as in cat, I as in Illinois, L as in lion.org/CCS11. And there's just a text file. It may not be up there now, but it will be up there by Sunday. So inventory, that's the first thing we're going to talk about. So you can inventory your system without any application. You just have to know where to look in Windows. I am lazy, so I want a utility to tell me everything. There's a free utility called BellArc Advisor. You may or may not have ever used it. It will do the job. If you like paying a little bit of money, there's a product called AIDA64, AIDA64. It'll generate a 120-page report about what's on your computer. Everything that both of these products do is completely available within Windows itself. It's just reading all the Windows configuration files and registry settings and just puts them in an organized format. We're actually going to do BellArc Advisor. So let me go over to my other screen here. I'm going to go over here to this camera. All right, so BellArc Advisor, let me just click on that real quick here. So BellArc Advisor, helps if I'm actually on the right mouse and keyboard. All right, so I'm actually looking at a system here. This system, come on, there we go. This system I know is not going to pass a PC health test for migrating. So I wanted to kind of give you a feel for what a bad one looks like. But here we are at BellArc Advisor. When for the download, for the free download, which is for home use, they do ask for, as you can see, an email address and stuff. In my notes, I will have the direct link, so you don't have to do this if you don't want to. But they want to sell you their upgraded package and all the other fun things that BellArc has. But we'll pretend like we have downloaded. Let me get here. Come on, there we go. Okay. Oh, helps if I'm again on the right screen. There we go. I don't need OneNote. Thank you very much. All right. So the very top one here says Advisor Installer. We're going to do that installation right now. So I've downloaded it. I'm installing it. Come on. Yeah. Here we go. There we go, like that. And yes, I do want to allow it to make changes to my device. And the changes is installation. It's pretty quick. I agree. And I install, it's probably going to ask me, oh, it's going to uninstall a previous version because I demoed this before. Okay. All right, so there we go. New definitions. I don't care about the new security definitions. Let's just go. So it's doing an update on the profile here of what my computer has, and it's going to tell me all the cool things which are installed on it. Probably the most important to me are the drivers and the applications, because those are the things that I'm going to have to make sure are on the new computer after it upgrades. This takes, let's see, oh, this takes about 8 minutes. So we may, I'll talk about some other things. Anyway, what this will do, this will come up with a profile. We'll look at it real quick. And then the next steps you're going to want to do after it generates this report is you're going to want to update your software. If you can, run updates on it. Update your drivers, because you'll want, when you do an update, if it allows you to do an update to Windows 11, you're going to want to at least have the right version of drivers there, so it knows what drivers to install when you do the update. Scope out your peripherals. You know, what has to connect to the computer? That's an important thing. Again, we talked about a VGA monitor, especially if you have to get a new to you computer. Does it have VGA ports, or does it have DisplayPort and not have HDMI? I mean, you just have to kind of know what you have. Another thing you'll do after you run the BellArc report is run the SFC, the checker for system files. You want to run a scan now. So if there's any bogus system files that are corrupted or not proper, that they get updated properly. And then the final thing that you'll do before you run your PC health check to say, can this actually work, is you're going to look at your event logs. Event logs is a Windows thing, and you're going to look for you're going to filter out errors, critical items, and warnings. So that's all you see. You don't care about everything at work. You only want to know about the things that haven't been working. There's 2 logs you want to check. You want to check your system log, and you want to check your application log. There's 2 logs. We might do that if we have enough time at the end here, so you can see this old computer and what it has and the errors. So there's a lot of entries in your log, chances are. I know that just my system log itself is 18,000 entries, but I'm only caring about the entries which are errors, critical items, or warnings, and only probably within the last couple of weeks. Because if it happened 2 years ago, who knows whether it makes any difference anymore. But if it's something recent, you're going to want to know about it, and that might give you some information that you need to look at and say, well, gee, my hard drive has been reporting, a disk 0 error for the last 9 months. I didn't know it. No wonder my computer is slow as molasses. It's because there's a read or write error on my hard drive. So that's good to know before you try and do the upgrade. Gosh, we're getting there. We're getting close. We're on checking the local network now. Again, I'll say, if your computer is older than the pandemic, there were no computers made prior to 2017 that had an 8th gen processor, and that's a minimum requirement for migrating to Windows 11. So if it's 2017. 2019 was pre-pandemic. You might have an 8th or 9th generation CPU in there. Again, we've all been able, or often been able, to upgrade from Windows 7, ignoring Windows 8, and going right to Windows 10. And that's just one of the things that there's a lot of baggage that gets carried forward, and we just want to know what's there. And this is going to take its sweet time. After we look at the Bellarc report, we will do a PC health check of this system, which is what tells you, will Windows 11 install, and we'll see how bad this PC has. This PC, by the way, has a 3rd generation CPU in it, so it's well past working as expected. Here we go, and here's my Bellarc report. It's done. I didn't do any security updates, which is why it's saying that. But if we look here, it's telling me that I'm running Windows 10 Professional 22H2. I am in UEFI mode with secure boot, which is great. This is one of those Lenovo's, Tim, but it's not a Windows S. So here's the CPU. It's a 1.8 gigahertz i5 3000 series or 3rd generation CPU. It's probably going to not pass. It has the right number of cores, the minimum number of cores, but it doesn't have the right generation of CPU. There's it checks really to be sure that you have certain CPU instructions in it that it wants to have. Now I have 64 gigs of free space out of 220 gig. That's going to be good. I have 4 gigs of usable installed memory. It's using a part of memory for the graphics card. So it says DIM1 has a 4 gig memory, and I have a capacity here for 8 gigs if I needed to upgrade it. Some accounts down here. We're going to see what controllers are on here. Let's see if I can get this to work easy. There we go. Oh, I just have a standard SATA chipset, just a standard Intel display type. My adapters. All this information may come up in when you're trying to install, and it's nice to know, oh, gee, what kind of storage controller do I need when I upgrade to Windows 11? Because it says it can't identify a storage controller or something like that. Here it's telling us communication devices, all my other interesting devices that are attached and operational. So I might have devices attached which aren't operational, but you'll notice I'm using a video capture to USB adapter, which acts like the second webcam, and it has a standard microphone. There's really nothing here that's really the Lenovo Easy Camera. Who knows if that's going to work when it comes over, but it won't come over because we already know CPU is incompatible. Let's scroll down some more, and then the other thing that we said here, network device, so it's giving me some information about my network device connectivity here. Very good. And let's see. Yeah, missing some security updates. Probably should get those before going ahead. There we go. And now we're seeing some of my software licenses. Who knows whether they're any good, but let's see. I got Microsoft Internet Explorer still on the system. We know that's not coming over. I'm still using Office 2016. There's a prior license for Windows 8.1. I think is what came with the system when I originally got it. Here, this is using the Realtek wireless LAN and Bluetooth driver. Hopefully it's supported. Just kind of giving you some ideas. And these are the apps: AccuWeather. I got a reader. I've got Amazon Mobile Kindle, which isn't even supported anymore. We have some CyberLink software, a whole bunch of MSN stuff, which I don't use. Older versions of OneDrive and OneNote, which don't carry forward to Windows 11 as they, in the versions they are right now. Let's see if I can get this to scroll better here. It's my other mouse. Very good. All right, Google Chrome. You can see I'm using Chrome 136. Chrome is currently at 138 or higher. You just got to look and kind of see, is there anything here that stands out? Oh, I'm running, I'm running Photoshop 3.0. I better know whether it's going to carry forward or not, or have a solution. So that's BellArc Advisor. Once I'm done with the BellArc, I can go and go back to PC Health. So if you want to get, I recommend, even if you have PC Health already installed on your system and it keeps telling you, hey, check your system to go to Windows 11, I would still download the latest one. The easiest way to find it is, just do a Google search for PC Health Microsoft. And it should come up to a Microsoft page that says how to use the PC Health Check app. And if you scroll down, very good, there will be a link. There it is. Get the PC Health Check app. All right. So I already have it. I already downloaded it because I'm on a slow computer. All right, so here it is, the Windows PC Health Check Setup MSI. This will take a lot less time than the BellArc did to check the system. It has to check a lot less detail. There we go. So it's installing. It's checking everything. Hello. Oh, it's behind my window here. There we go. Check now. Let me get rid of my uninstaller here. Oh, let's go back. Did I close it? Oh, I did. What a goofball. All right, let's go back and relaunch that. All right. Did I see? Let's see. Here we go. Oh, there it is. All right. Check now. Oh, don't start my video yet. Try that one more time. Oh, and there it is. Popped up there. And this PC doesn't meet Windows 11 requirements. First off, it doesn't have a TPM module. And it's a laptop, and trying to put a TPM module on a laptop is not for the faint of heart. And the processor is currently not supported, and it's telling me I have a 3rd generation CPU. However, the rest of my results were better. If I decided I wanted to do something about this, let's say I had a desktop and I was willing to buy more parts to make it work. This PC already supports secure boot. It's got 4 gig of RAM. Wouldn't want to run Windows 11 and 4 gig of RAM, but it's got it. It's got at least 64 gig of system disk or larger. The storage says it's 128, but if you recall, I only have 64 gigabytes free. It just so happens that's also the amount that's needed. And it has 2 cores. So it could basically work if I wanted it to. All right, except for the fact that it's an old processor and doesn't have TPM. So we're not going to hack it. Let me show you a video of a system that ran PC Health. There it is. This one ran PC Health. I'm going to start up the video here, and you can see now it's going to check. Let's make that work. There we go. All right. So it meets the requirements. This system should work, and we can see all the results if we want. Supports Qubit, has 2.0. It's got an 8th generation Intel Core processor. It has 16 gig of RAM. It has 512 gigabytes of storage, and it has 4 cores. So this system is an ideal candidate to do the upgrade. I wouldn't have to migrate. The other one that we did before, probably not so much. We would be migrating to a new system. All right, let me change my camera back. All right. There we go, I'm back. After you run PC Health Check, you have failure or you have success. The next thing you want to make sure you know is your administrator username and its password, because you may need it as part of the update. You're also going to want a backup device. All that hard drive, in case, well, you'll definitely need it if you're going to migrate. If you're going to take your computer and it's not going to go anymore, you're going to need to migrate all your data and your applications to your replacement device that is compatible. But even if you are running an upgrade on your current computer, I would strongly suggest that you have a backup device, a USB device, a terabyte. You know, it could be a spinning disk for all that matters. Speed's not what's important here. It's the ability to back up. And then you've got to make a determination. Do you want to upgrade or do you want to migrate? A new device, a refurbished device, an alternate device. Or not upgrade at all and just let it fly. Keep using Windows 10 until it doesn't do it. Especially if all you use your Windows 10 computer. If you're one of those iPad people, or you have another computer and you just want your a computer that's not going to browse the web because you don't want to be security crazy, but you have an app that you want to use. This is the app that I use for editing all my videos. And this computer is fine for that, and I don't want to have to get a new dongle that will work in Windows 11, and I don't remember my license key. Windows 10 is just going to work. It's going to work and work. I'm still running a Windows 7 computer that's isolated, not on the interwebs. If you have to be on the interwebs, there's a proxy in between, so it never really touches the interwebs. The problem is the browsers are going to all fail over time. They're not going to have certificates because all websites now have HTTPS. So, your certificates may have expired. There's all sorts of just problems. They're just going to accumulate over time. That's it. I'm done. Any questions? Yes. Dennis.
I noticed one on your BellArc Advisor. At one thing you said it told you, oh, you're missing this Microsoft security update.
Yeah.
How does it know that? In other words, every time Microsoft issues an update, BellArc updates itself, right?
Yeah. If you notice, when I started BellArc, it said, do you want to run updates? You haven't been updated in 40 days. So It's actually updating a database of CPUs, memory suppliers, hard drive manufacturers, whatever's the latest and greatest that it might encounter. Plus, it's looking at all the past updates for that level of operating system.
Okay.
One other thing BellArc does is it scans your computer, and it can scan your update history.
Yeah.
So and it goes beyond what you will see in the graphical interface. it will know things about your C++ distributables and things like that. Things that CCleaner can tell you, but Windows Update won't.
Right. Yeah. So I say it's nice. There's some other tools out there. There's system info. There's some tools that came out from Russakoff, who's now with Microsoft with their sysinternal tools. There's just all sorts of tools which are out there. I just happened to pick BellArc because it was free and I could get to it relatively easily. And again, I can't speak highly enough about AIDA 64, like the Opera AIDA 64, and just the detail it dumps out, and you can look at it, and since it can dump out in HTML or a TXT or a CSV file, it can dump all the information, whatever you need. You can, if it's a text file, you can do a before and after, and you can see all the differentials. If you have like Notepad double plus, you can do a file comparison between the two and see what's changed. Even after you do updates, you can see what's changed. So.
Another option for people who are not going to move up to Windows 11 is a Chromebook.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a lot more done on Chromebook than way back in 2012 when they first started coming out.
Yeah. It just means that all your stuff's going to be in the cloud, and how comfortable you are with all your files being in the cloud. The other thing you can do, if it's an older computer, is you can put Chrome OS on it, and it becomes a Chrome box, and you don't install all the other stuff. It's got the Chrome interface, and you can go. Although Chrome OS may not be around, so I don't, I can't vouch for it for eternity. Google likes getting rid of things after a period of time. They're not profitable to them.
There are a couple other Chrome OS emulations from the Linux world that can be put on.
Yep.
One's Endless OS, if it's still running. FYDEOS is another one that I know of. And I think there was a third one, but I'm not remembering what it was right now.
Yep. So you don't have to go out and buy a new computer. So one nice thing about buying a new computer, I'll say that right now, is it'll probably come with Windows 11 already on it. And you don't have to install anything. You just have to get all your stuff from the old computer to the new computer. And that we will be covering that under migration. That'll be the September meeting.
One other thing about Windows 11. Ron, you said that Windows 11 won't work with USB 2. That's not really quite true. For mass storage, it doesn't like it. But I am currently using a webcam, which is USB 2 connected, and a keyboard and a mouse.
The USB device that you have that may not work, they're still making USB 2 devices today. But if you got it a long time ago, if you got it back just after USB 1.1 or 1.0, you don't know if that USB, because they don't update the firmware every year for your USB device. So, might work, might not. Just, you got to be prepared. If it doesn't work, and it might not work just because that manufacturer no longer provides the necessary drivers in Windows 11, and Microsoft could care less about it because the market share is too small.
That would also include security features in Windows 11, including core isolation and memory protection, which some drivers are not compatible with if they're older drivers.
Yep.
Or if they're from companies like Logitech, which never updates its drivers.
Dig. Dig.
Well, it's true. I have two webcams I bought recently from Logitech. The drivers were not compatible with those features.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm done. Thank you very much. This
All right.
will be, if all things being equal, if Jim finds that everything worked the way it was supposed to, be up on the YouTube website. So you can direct people to it. And if you have friends that are saying, what's going to happen with Windows 10? You say, well, go look at the CCS website, their YouTube page.
Okay. I've got a few things that I'm gonna do. Hang on a minute. And now populating that. And I'm going to attempt to share my screen. All right. And oops, wait a minute. You're jumping the gun. Come on, stop. All right. Now, you start it up again. And I'm telling you to stop. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Missed one little thing. Sound was off.
Chat about risks and Windows 10.
Oh, have I got an echo? Or have I got an echo?
So you already know.
I don't know about anybody else, but I'm not hearing anything.
Yeah, I hear no sound.
Forcing us to let's chat about risk and Windows 10. Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. So you already know that risk is everywhere. Heck, just getting out of bed, or for that matter, staying in bed, involves risk of some sort. And of course, using technology involves risk. Using our computer might not involve the physical or health risks associated with getting out of bed or staying there, but it does involve risks associated with things like privacy and security and theft. Now, the end of Windows 10 support is the latest situation that's really forcing us to think hard about risk. Every decision is about managing risk, and there are no perfect answers. I've written about this before, that there is no such thing as safe, for example. You could be more safe, You can be less safe, but you cannot be absolutely safe. Everything involves risk. Risk management, then, is all about being safer, or as safe as you can pragmatically be. Windows 10's end of support is a great opportunity to examine risk, but this kind of thinking is important in the way you manage any technology, honestly, perhaps life itself. Now, at Windows 10's end of service later this year, you have 4 main options, each with its own set of risks. Number 1, do nothing. Maybe you don't like Windows 11, maybe your machine can't handle it, but one very important option to understand is to simply do nothing. Keep running Windows 10 after the end of support date. The risk is that security vulnerabilities would be discovered and not patched, and your security software might not protect you quickly enough or at all. Now, to be clear, this isn't about security software itself not being updated. Most will be, including Windows security. It's about those updates arriving soon enough, or the vulnerability being something that security software can even protect against. Remember, even security software itself is never perfect. Option number 2, of course, is to upgrade to Windows 11. If your existing machine supports it, you could upgrade to Windows 11. The risks here, well, a little less scary, I suppose, include not being able to acclimate yourself to the user interface changes, and that some of the programs you rely on may also have changed in ways that prevent you from using them as you did before. There's also a small chance that the software you run in Windows 10 might not run in Windows 11. Option number 3 then is to get a new PC for Windows 11. If your existing computer can't run Windows 11, replace it. The risks seem a little less risky, but still no less annoying. To begin with, you're spending money on new hardware. You're also dealing with your old machine, having to figure out whether you're going to recycle it or donate it or repurpose it somehow. And all of those compatibility and learning curve issues I just talked about in the previous option, they're still there as well. And of course, option number 4, you could ditch Windows completely and switch to Linux. It should run just fine on your existing Windows 10 machine. The risks here are once again primarily around getting used to the new interface. Linux is similar, but different enough to be a learning curve. You'll need to find Linux versions or alternatives to your favorite apps. One real risk is that you may not be able to. And Linux security is strong, but like Linux itself, different, and you'll need to learn perhaps a few new habits. Now, the controversy around all of this is simply this. Not everyone agrees with the risk assessments made by others. For example, in my opinion, you can keep on using Windows 10 safely after its end of support date if you follow best practices and make sure that your security software is running and its database is being updated regularly. This is what people who've disabled Windows Update in Windows 10 have been doing already, sometimes for years. This is what many people did at Windows 7's end of support. In fact, there are some people still running Windows 7. And this is what many people did at Windows XP's end of support. Heck, there may even be a few of those still running. Now, not everyone agrees with what I've just said. Some believe a major, dangerous vulnerability will surface after support ends, and hackers will jump on it fast, putting all of the out-of-support Windows 10 installations at unacceptable risk. My take is that while it's certainly possible, our experience to date says that it's extremely unlikely. There is no 100% risk-free path. There is no such thing as safe. You need to choose the amount of risk you're willing to live with, and then make decisions for yourself accordingly. The good news here is that regardless of your choice, good security practices and smart decisions make it possible to stay safe. I'm curious, what's your risk profile? What's your risk tolerance? What kinds of things worry you the most? Not just about the Windows 10 to 11 situation, but risks in general, online and off. Let me know down below. If you've got a question for me, visit askleo.com/ask. If you're interested in signing up for my weekly Confident Computing newsletter, that's at askleo.com/newsletter. And if you want to chip in and help keep this thing running, visit askleo.com/patron for all of the options available. As always, thanks for watching. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is AskLeo.com.
I can't hear you, Tim.
Thank you. I had to turn off my mic. The problem is there is risk in everything. If you do investments, usually you have an advisor and they try and figure out a risk assessment for you that you are most comfortable with. Are you a big gambler, or are you ultra conservative and hide your money in your bed? What are you? We don't know. Only you can figure out what you are risk tolerant to. So you have to keep that in mind, even with the computers, especially when there's a major change like we're trying to go through right now. I have another one from Leo.
How does my security software protect me after Windows 10 end of support? Hi everyone, Leo Notenboom here for AskLeo.com. Here's a question. Does software such as Malwarebytes, which I have, or Windows Defender provide protection from Windows 10 hacks? I guess I don't understand what Windows vulnerabilities are being fixed security-wise by MS Windows updates that antivirus and anti-malware tools can't protect a PC from. With Windows 10 end of support coming up, this is an excellent and very important question. After the end of support, you'll get no security updates for Windows itself, but most security software like Defender and Malwarebytes and many, many others are going to keep working and will continue to be updated for a long time thereafter. Do they solve the problem? No. Do they reduce the risk? Yes, definitely. In order to explain this, I'm going to go back to one of my silliest metaphors ever. Your PC is a bathroom. I think this helps get the idea across. Hopefully, the silliness won't get in the way. So, think of your computer as a bathroom. You have some expectation of privacy and security while you use it. You probably even consider privacy and security very important while you're in there. All right, let's define some terms. A vulnerability is like a hole in the bathroom wall. It could be a small hole that just allows someone to peek inside, or it could be a larger hole that allows someone to, say, reach inside and do something like flush the toilet when you're not around. You may have holes in your bathroom that no one knows about yet. Malware is like those creeps actively trying to use the holes that they found. Malware tries to peek into your bathroom, or worse. An exploit is when malware, a creep, actually finds a hole, a vulnerability, and does something malicious. Security updates are the construction workers that come around every so often to your bathroom and plug or patch the holes, the vulnerabilities, that they know about. Security software is like the security guard patrolling your home to watch for suspicious creeps, malware, who are up to no good. All right, with those definitions out of the way, at product's end of support, the construction workers, those security updates, they go home never to return. Any holes left in your bathroom walls will be there for as long as you have that bathroom. If a creep can find a hole and get to it, they can do their malicious things. If you're not actively patching the holes in your bathroom walls, you're relying much more heavily on your security guards to keep the creeps away from those holes to begin with. Or, in computer terms, if you're no longer getting security updates to patch the vulnerabilities in your computer software, you're relying much more heavily on your security software to keep the malware away. You're also relying more on your own behavior. You don't allow strangers into your home, for example, because they might be creeps. And you don't trust the salesperson or overexcited messenger at your door claiming to be something they're not. In other words, you don't download and install software or open attachments you don't absolutely trust, and you know to keep an eye out for spam and phishing. You become even more skeptical of anyone you let into your house, or your bathroom, or your computer. Someday, your security company is going to say, hey, sorry, your house is too old and we can't give you security guards anymore. They're going to stop coming around. Now, given that your security software has become extra important since security updates stopped, that's a problem. You have two choices when that happens. Find another company to provide security guards that are willing to keep an eye on your old house. In other words, get new security software that will continue to support your Windows 10 computer. Or move to a more modern house, i.e. Windows 11. It's important to realize that this is completely separate from the original end of support we talked about. Using Windows 10 as our example, Windows 10's end of support, in other words, no more hole patching, comes in October of 2025. Windows Defender's end of support for Windows 10, meaning no more patrolling security guards, is several years later. Other security software vendors, in other words, other security guard companies, may have different dates before they pull their crew. But again, it's typically several years after the original Windows end of support. Pragmatically, many, if not most folks, will have moved on, gotten a new computer or installed a new operating system by that time, and already be living in a more modern house with a shiny new bathroom that their security company is more than willing to keep an eye on. Yes, your security software will help protect you, but it is not the same as fixing the vulnerabilities no longer patched in the operating system. Coupled with a new, renewed focus on your own good behavior, good security software may be enough to keep you more secure. It could be the basis for using an operating system such as Windows 10 long past its end of support date. For updates, for comments, for links related to this topic and more, visit askleo.com/179899. I'm Leo Notenboom, and this is askleo.com. Thanks.
It's Ron Brown with Tech for Senior. If you're finding it harder to see text on your computer screen, you're not alone, and you're not out of luck. Windows 10 and 11 come with built-in tools that can make your screen easier to read, even for those with reduced vision. Today we're going to talk about making your screen easier to see, and I'm going to show you the changes that you can make in your computer that will help with your visual challenges. Now, before we get started, please click that like and subscribe, and let's get on with the show. So before we start looking at computer settings, there are some things that you can do to improve your vision. The first is make sure your glasses are correct. There are special glasses for computer viewing, and we'll talk about that. Ambient lighting, and even making sure that your computer screen is clean. So there are some things that we need to talk about before we get into the settings. The second is, of course, that the demonstration today will be on my Windows 10 PC. But the accessibility features for you are really pretty much the same on Windows 10 and Windows 11. Now, you will need to know where to get to the settings menu. You'll hit the start button and go to settings. That is the same in both Windows 10 and 11. But where you look for the settings is a little bit different. In Windows 11, it's in accessibility. In Windows 10, it's in ease of access. So I'm not going to repeat that through the whole video. It's just something that's there. You can in Windows 11. It's a bit different to find than in Windows 10. So the thing you need to know about glasses is that there are specific glasses for computer screens. Yes, if you are watching a computer screen for a long time, like I do, and wear glasses, you can purchase specific glasses that are designed to help you with eye strain on your computer screen. For viewing computer screens, the best type of glasses are computer or blue light blocking glasses specifically designed to reduce eye strain. So when purchasing glasses, look for the blue light filtering to reduce digital eye strain, anti-glare and anti-scratch coatings for comfort and durability, and lightweight frames to avoid nose and ear pressure during prolonged use. Improving ambient lighting can make a big difference for seniors and everyone struggling to see their computer screens clearly. Here are the most helpful changes. To reduce glare, avoid bright overhead lights or lamps directly behind you. Use indirect lighting or lamps with diffusers to soften reflections. Position your screen perpendicular to windows to reduce sunlight glare, and use anti-glare screen filter if needed. Cleaning your computer screen the right way is essential for both clear visibility and screen safety, especially for seniors who may already have trouble seeing fine detail. So here is the best way to clean it. So what you'll need is a small microfiber cloth, distilled water, or you can use a mixture of 50% distilled water and 50% white vinegar. You'll need a small spray bottle, and remember, never spray the liquid onto the screen. Always spray it onto the microfiber cloth, gently in a dry circular motion with a microfiber cloth. Use a circular motion to lift dust and fingerprints. Don't press too hard. LCD and LE panels can be delicate. Now, it's very important that you do not use Windex, alcohol, or paper towels. They can scratch or damage the coatings on your computer display. Don't spray liquid directly on the screen, and avoid abrasive cloths or too much pressure. All right, let's talk about changes you can make in your computer screen. The first thing we want to talk about is screen resolution and screen scaling. Both of these are two totally different things, and I'm going to show you where to find them and how to modify them. Now, the first thing we want to talk about is screen resolution. And this, a common example would be, is your screen could be set to 1920 by 1080. This is what we call full HD. Now, this is set automatically by your computer when it's connecting to your screen. The computer sort of knows what's the resolution of the screen. So when you go in and look at this, and I'll show you this in a minute, higher resolution, of course, means more detail, but smaller text and icons. So if you have a higher resolution screen, things are probably going to look a little bit smaller. Now, a lower resolution screen, but less detail, but larger text and icons. In other words, they're making things bigger to fill things up because they don't have as many pixels. Think of it as like a high resolution screen is a big piece of paper with a lot of tiny little dots. A lower resolution screen has bigger and bigger dots though. So let's have a look and see where we can find the resolution on our computer. All right, let's have a look at the screen resolution on this monitor. We're going to come down to the bottom left-hand corner here, and we're going to click the little Windows icon, and this is going to bring up our settings menu. We're going to click Settings, and we have our settings menu, and we're going to come down to System. Let's go to the System display. This is similar on Windows 10 and Windows 11. So we're going to click Windows Notification, and we're going to go, this is my second monitor. We're going to click this monitor because that's the one I'm looking at now. And we're going to come down And we're going to see that we're going to talk about right now display resolution. We'll talk about scale in a minute, but today right now we're going to talk about display resolution. And this is set at 1920 by 1080. And this is recommended by Windows for this particular monitor. It is an HD monitor. Now we can change this, but I wouldn't recommend it. Now we can see here that we can change the display, which will actually make things a little bit bigger, but it's going to change your screen size. Let's see if I change this to 1280 by 768. Now you can see it on our screen, it's going to shrink the screen size down. So I don't want to keep these display settings. Usually I would recommend going with what the recommendation is your computer will make for that screen. What we are going to change is the scale and layout in a minute. Let's talk about that. So one of the first things that you want to tweak is your display scaling. Because of high resolution 4K monitors we have now, the print and the fonts can be little itty bitty things that are very hard to see. So what we want to do with modern monitors is adjust the scaling. And that's why Microsoft lets you change the scaling, which will make everything bigger without changing the resolution. So, and that's why there's a second setting there called scaling. And that's what you should have a look at. Now let's see what happens when we change the scaling. Now the nice thing about this is you can have the scaling set per monitor. So if you have multiple monitors, you would have the scaling set differently for each monitor. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, now we're back in our display setting, exactly where we left off before, and you'll see that we have our screen resolution set for 1920 by 1080. But above, let's look at scale and layout. Recommended 100%, but we can change this now. Let's click the drop-down menu and see we can have it set for 125 or 150. So let's have a look. So when it says 150, that's going to mean that the fonts will be 1.5 times as big. So let's see how this can change things. Whoa, isn't that pretty cool? Suddenly things are quite a bit bigger. And this is going to make things a lot easier for you to see. Now this would apply to all your displays on this particular monitor. You could increase the size to 150%. Let's go up to 100. Let's get really crazy here. Let's go to 175. So that's pretty darn big. So you can get some pretty big display images here by increasing the scale and layout. I'm going to put mine back to 100%, which is what I like, and we're going to leave it there. But if you are having trouble, you could certainly change your display and layout setting. All right, let's look at a few more settings to help you. All right, we're going to come down now and we're going to click on our settings button again. We'll come up to settings. This time I want you to go way over to the right. Now this is a little bit different on Windows 11, but the principles are the same. We're going to go over to the ease of access, way over here to the right, and we're going to click this. And this is going to bring up another display setting. And right at the top you'll see make text bigger. Remember that setting I just showed you about making your display bigger? Remember we went over the 125, 150, 175? Well, you don't have to actually make the whole screen bigger. You can just make the text bigger. And again, by scrolling along here, as you see, we can actually just make the text on the screen bigger. So play around with that, and you might be able to help see on your screen by simply making the text bigger. Now, we also can change our pointer size. Again, this is our pointer, and if we want to make this bigger, we can certainly just bring this up, and we can certainly make this bigger or smaller depending on what we want. And we can also make the text cursor bigger or smaller. This is the cursor that indicates where the text is going to be. But I wanted to just show you those three changes that you can make in the ease of access in the settings menu. Now, Magnifier is part of a vision accessibility feature in Windows 10 and 11 and is a built-in accessibility tool that helps users with vision difficulty by enlarging parts of the screen. It acts like a digital magnifying glass, and it can be used for different modes and depending on your needs. So let's have a look at the different modes of Magnifier. All right, let's bring up Magnifier controls. So we'll come down to the bottom again, the bottom left-hand corner here, and we are going to click on Settings. And as we come up in our Settings menu here, we're going to come way over to the right, Ease of Access, and we're going to click here. And of course, we're now going to come down to the left side, and you'll see an item here called Magnifier. Let's click on this and see where we are. Now, this is an important part of Windows if you have sight problems. And let me explain how this works. So as we come down, first of all, you can turn in the settings magnifier on or off just by simply toggling this switch. But I want you to come down here and you can start magnifier after sign in. So it will automatically start, or start magnifier before sign in for everyone. So you may want to choose one of these two so you don't actually have to start it every time you're going to use it. However, if you want to turn this on, there is a key command for this, and press the Windows logo key plus to turn on magnifier. So you can turn it on by Windows plus. You can use the Windows logo plus escape to turn off the magnifier. So you can either do it through this toggle here. You can either use the Windows key with the plus or escape to turn it on or off. And you can also, you'll see in a moment, you can use key commands to increase or decrease the size of magnification. Now, we'll talk about this in a minute, but when you choose magnification, you have three modes. If you come down here, you'll see it change magnifier view, and you're going to see that you have a docked view, and we'll talk about that in a minute, a full screen, or a lens view. And so we'll talk a little bit about those in just a minute. You can change these views of how this works. You can invert the colors. You can smooth edges of all the images and text, or you can invert colors. Sometimes different colors are more easy to view. As we come down here, you also can have the magnifier follow the mouse pointer, keyboard focus, text cursor, or narrative cursor. All right, we're back in magnifier, and let's just have a look at how this is going to work. We're going to take the Windows logo on my keyboard, and I'm going to hit the plus button here. Now you'll see on the screen magnifier is turned off. When I use the Windows and the plus, it turns it on. Now we've been doing this with the full screen, so what we want to come down here and we can change the magnifier view. And what does that mean? Well, we're magnifying everything now, but let's come down and say that we want to do a docked view. So here we are in docked view. Now we have this docked up at the top, but if I take my mouse cursor and I come down and I come to the different levels, we're keeping the rest of the screen the same, but it's just adding the magnification to the docked view at the top here. I think this is really cool. So as I come down the screen, you'll see it's just magnifying each part of that, but it's sending it to the docked part, which is I've set it up at the top of my screen. I think this would be really helpful for people with sight problems. Now let's take the next we can take, and we're going to come down here and we're going to change this to the lens. Now what the lens does is this changes the magnification to a lens. So we can move, as we move the lens around, you can see how this changes the viewing. So we can magnify it with, no matter where we put this lens. That's cool too. Anyway, the three that we have here are lens, docked, and full screen. You should know those three those three modes, those are very important. All right, the next thing I want to show you is something that I use all the time. On the screen, you'll see that I have two tabs open in my Chrome browser. On the left side, you'll see that I have our Tech for Senior website open, and on the right side, you'll see I have Amazon Shopping. Two different tabs open. I'm going to click on the Tech for Senior, our website tab. Now, I'm going to show you how you can increase and decrease the size of one tab that doesn't affect the other one. Let me show you. We're going to do Control Plus and watch what happens to the Tech for Senior side. Watch it go up, and as we zoom in, that's using the Control plus the plus. All right. Now, if I want to go out, I can use the Control. I can use the Control and go Control minus. And let's just zoom in again. And if I want to take it back to the default, go Control 0. So it's Control plus, Control minus, or Control 0. And you can actually increase the size of that tab. You saw that the other tab, the Amazon tab, didn't change. And why is this important? Well, first of all, a lot of people might just have one tab open and they hit the Control plus and it gets too big and they can't figure out how to get out of there. So it's certainly a tech question that I get asked a lot. And my wife does this and I have to go and fix the computer for her. So it's just remember Control plus, Control minus, and Control 0. But on our Thursday show on Tech for Senior, I have a situation where we have all our images and where I have all our articles on our Facebook page. And what I want to do is I want to increase the size of that page so that when we display it for broadcasting, people can see the text on those articles a lot easier. But I don't want to magnify my other tabs because it gets too big. So I just want to do the one particular tab and magnify it. So you'll find this very handy the more you use it. All right, we've talked about glasses. We've talked about cleaning your screen. We've talked about lighting. We've talked about computer settings. But remember, there's always the opportunity for you, if you're having trouble with your vision, to simply plug a bigger monitor in. You can go 34-inch, bigger yet. You can even plug it into a television and put it on a 90-inch TV. So you can always plug bigger TVs or monitors into your computer. Also, don't forget that all devices can cast to a TV. And all modern TVs now, it's pretty easy to cast to them, so you can cast it. You don't even have to plug it in. So there are lots of options for peripheral devices that you can plug in and make your screen a lot bigger to see. Well, it's Ron Brown with Tech for Senior. Hopefully I've given you some insight into how to see your computer screen, even if you are having trouble with your vision. Be sure and click that like and subscribe, and we'll be sure to notify you when our next video comes out. Till we see you again, have a great day.
Damn, you're muted.
This was Tech for Seniors yesterday's meeting, in which this was one of the main presentations of their Tech for Seniors presentations. And I thought it very apropos since we are an aging group. And a lot of people, including Ron Brown, Ron Friedman, who already left, has some vision situations that he may have benefited from this, but I'll get him the handout. One thing I want to mention is next Tuesday night is the Linux SIG meeting. I'm going to be putting into the due to the hour, I'll put into the chat the handout. If anybody's got any questions or discussions about what has transpired this evening, let's take a little time while I get that ready to go. Everybody understood everything? And what did you think of it?
A lot of good information here.
What does that mean?
It means Ron's presentation, I had some really good points about the upgrade experience. I liked both of the Ask Leo assessments of risk and of moving to Windows 10 and describing what will happen and when. And then making the screen easier to read, I was following along and playing along as he did that.
Okay, I got one other tip then at this point. One of the problems that we've had in not only 11, but in prior versions is visual effects and the impact it can have on performance of your system. In 11, if you go into the area of accessibilities, the second item on the right side is visual effects. And in there, you'll probably see a switch turned on for visual effects. If you turn that off, then you can go into the visual effects settings, turn everything but form off. At least it is for me. And that'll reduce the impact of Windows sensation of trying to get all kinds of effects, shadowing, animations, and other things that aren't necessary for our day-to-day use. They're nice for maybe a short period of time, a month or so. And after that, they're just eating up resources in your computer, no matter what kind of computer you have, from the low-end Lenovo that got dropped off at my house, all the way to the most powerful gaming machine you can pay for. It's still eating up some of the resources and taking time that can cause other things to slow down. So getting rid of that helps a lot. But in the past, we manually turned off, like in 10, the visual settings we don't want. And then along comes a Windows update, and they turn them back on again, or at least some of them back on. So you got to keep checking and turning them off. Well, with that one switch turned off in 11, under accessibilities and visual effects, they won't come back. They'll leave them exactly the way the ones you have. One of them is like scrolling so that you can see in a box as it's scrolling instead of it being blurry. I leave that on, and there's 3 others above it that I also keep on, and everything else I always try and have off so it's not getting in my way. So there's your another tip. Anybody else got any comments on tonight's presentations?
I agree with Bob. I really liked all four segments. Yeah, very good.
Well, after West Side and what Ron presented, I remember seeing these other 2, and so I looked them up again and included them. The handout is in the chat, so you can download that. Terry, to get much out of this, you're going to have to wait for the video to be posted and replay the whole video.
Right here, Tim. Yeah.
Well, at least several of you, I hope to see next week at the Linux SIG.
Yep.
You, Bert, can come along. Terry, you can't handle leaving the window, so don't bother with the Linux SIG.
You're right there, Tim.
Yeah, I don't even think you could handle a Chromebook.
For a long time, I ran my Chromebook as a Chromebook,
Oh yeah.
as well as doing Linux on it. Linux only for times when I needed the serious power, and Chromebook for times when all I wanted to do was just email, surf the web, and I wanted to keep things secure without bothering with it.
Well, with my Chromebooks, they were obsolete several years back, and I haven't had one. Now all of a sudden I got two. I haven't researched to find out how long I'll get updates for, but they ought to be. I think they were purchased according to a piece of paper I had with one of them in 2020. It should be available for about 7 years, if not now 10 years. So I can get 2 to 5 more years use out of these two Chromebooks.
Yeah, I think at that time it was about 8 years.
I only remember 7 and 10.
Okay, maybe 7.
Originally, Chromebooks for a decade were around just 5 years.
Mine got, I think it was 7. But when I bought it, turned out the model was already a year or two old. Not that it mattered to me. All I wanted to do was see if I could convert it to Linux. That having been accomplished, it lives on.
Well, these I'll be researching into and see how things go. I still got a heck of an echo and I'm not sure where it's coming from.
Mute the machine you were using for the video and you'll be fine.
That could be. I had it muted originally, and yeah,
That did it.
yeah. But the bad part is to do the videos on that machine, I got to have the sound on, and somehow it's echoing back anyhow, even though I had my mic turned off.
Well, that's for you to figure out. You're the technician.
Yeah. Hell, I got the new puzzle with these 3 Lenovo's. I took off the S mode off of the laptop, and now I'm gonna finish probably setting up the normal way I would have it set up, and then I'll attempt to do an upgrade to 24H2 and see what happens. But I'm sure I'm going to have that thing just sitting somewhere with the AC power on, even though it has good, from the looks of it, this thing with that Celeron 2 core, 4 gigs of memory, that thing supposedly can get up to 11, 12 hours on a charge.
You may need it.
Yeah, well, that's why I say I'll have the AC on. Because with 24H2 to go from 22H2 to 24H2, like I said, I'm not sure if I'll be alive by the time that thing gets done.
Yeah.
But at least we got that out of the way. I'm going to have to try and think of some things I can suggest to Ron on future presentations because I don't think that goes over well the way he's doing it right now. And I got a couple ideas. I'll try and see if I can pass those on to him.
Well, maybe different presentations at different CCS meetings, because I think this was pretty much a rehash of what we got at, what was it, West Side?
That is, but each month is going to be a different topic, and I gave him some suggestion in the West Side. He picked up on a few of those in this one here, and he'll probably do the same thing in the next 5 or 6 months.
Right.
And in the meantime, I've got the suggestion that I put together a video for switching to Linux as another alternative.
Yeah, that is a good alternative for those who are intrepid enough to try it.
It ain't that bad.
In other words, not Terry.
Well, I mean, nothing's perfect, but at the same time, too, one thing that you guys aren't aware of, John Kennedy was in the group tonight for most of the night. John Kennedy is our APCUG region advisor, and him and Judy do most of the APCUG meeting management.
You should have welcomed them into the meeting.
Yeah. Every once in a blue moon, and I mean a blue moon, he comes in, but not very often. I haven't yet, I think, only seen him once since I started the Linux SIGs, and he's a Linux guy. So at most, I've only seen him once.
But he is our APCG regional director.
Yes.
Also, when Ron does a presentation, it would be helpful if his screen wasn't just a box.
That's what I'm referring to just a bit ago here. It's how he's doing it that's the problem. And he's not doing what I do, okay? And I even know an alternative method he can also use. But in either case, it's up to him to do it. And that's why I didn't like Westside in this meeting's video. It's almost impossible to really view what he's talking about with that small of a image.
Yeah, what I did for my own use, and this can be done on Zoom video recording, was to either pin him or to go to multi-speaker view.
That could be. I couldn't change even mine for some reason.
As host, you may not be able to change it. When recording, you may not be able to change it.
That's true too. But see, the thing is, for that kind of presentation on an alternate machine like that, he can use Zoom free account to record the whole thing and then to play it back as a video in his one sign on. Or he can end up logging both machines into Zoom meeting and do the presentation, and it would be full screen.
Yeah, I have done that myself. I've logged in twice to a meeting. Once as myself, once as my other computer.
Well, that's why I'm usually in 3 to 4 times in our meetings, because I'm not only recording it on at least 2 machines, I also do a presentation, and that way I get full screen. So those are a couple things that I want to pass on to Ron.
Yeah, there was a different fellow, maybe another Ron, who went over to Apple products because he thought Windows was too complicated, and he didn't like all the updating and all the settings that you and I go into and all that. Well, I don't know how this Ron feels about that sort of thing.
Well, I mean, Ron's got a tech background, and he's a consultant. So
So he knows he can do it.
it's just a case where, uh, with the Apple environment, you're very restricted what you can and cannot do. It's pricier than any other alternatives.
Yeah.
A lot of people just can't afford that priciness to go to the Mac environment. But nonetheless, it's a situation where it's up to each individual to figure out how to do it. Chromebooks are an option. I didn't have one. Now I got one. I might be able to even create a video for that option.
Yeah, that'll work.
Maybe. We gotta wait and see on that one.
For some people, that would be what they would want.
Yeah.
Moving from Windows over to Chromebooks.
Especially a lot of seniors. I'll tell you, the Chrome OS is a much friendlier environment. There's less to mess with, and you basically just get things done. So the worst you've got is initially setting it up to do what you want to do and finding your way around on it. Once that's accomplished, the more you use it, the more familiar it is, and it's easy to use.
Yep, Chromebooks are simple and user-friendly. That's why I prefer Linux.
Yeah. Linux is, it depends upon the individual. If you want to stay with strictly plain graphical user use, like a replacement for Windows machine, then it's probably not too bad, and you still have a lot of flexibility and customization. But when you really start wanting to get more out of the machine, that's where the rubber hits the road, and too often you got to get into some deep stuff into the terminal and stuff like that.